In a small hospital nestled on the outskirts of a quiet town, Nurse Evelyn was known for her cold, clinical efficiency. Her uniform was always perfectly pressed, her movements precise and deliberate. She ran the baby ward with an almost robotic detachment, attending to her charges with an eerie composure. The hospital staff spoke of her in reverent tones, often commenting on her exceptional ability to manage even the most difficult cases. But beneath the polished exterior of perfection, Evelyn harbored a darkness that no one could see. Over the years, many infants had passed under her care, but far more had died than anyone could account for. More than 40 babies, though the exact number was never fully known, had perished under her watch. Each death was swift, quiet, and unremarkable. The hospital records always showed the same explanation: natural causes, sudden illness, or failure to thrive. But those who worked with Evelyn began to notice the pattern, though they dared not speak of it. She chose the weakest infants, the most fragile, those who seemed like they might slip away on their own, and then one by one they did. There was a chilling sense of inevitability in it all. The mothers came, full of hope and love, entrusting their most precious treasures to Evelyn's care. But they left with empty arms, their hearts broken, their tears flowing freely in the quiet halls. No one ever questioned the nurse, no one except for the mothers, who grieved silently and quietly, unable to voice their suspicions. Evelyn's efficiency was unmatched, and as long as no one asked questions, she was untouchable. Each baby that died under her watch seemed to carry a weight of its own, a weight that Evelyn felt deep inside her, but never acknowledged. It was a price that had to be paid, she told herself. The weak ones would always die. That was simply the way of the world. But one day Charlotte arrived. Charlotte was different from the others. She was a powerful woman, rich, influential, and known throughout the region. Her name carried weight. Her presence commanded attention. The staff marveled at her poise and beauty. But Evelyn, ever the professional, saw only the task before her: to care for Charlotte's newborn. The child, a healthy, chubby baby boy, was entrusted to Evelyn's hands, as if this were just another routine. Charlotte did not question Evelyn's care. Why would she? The nurse was perfect. But as the days passed, something began to change. The baby, once vibrant and healthy, started to show signs of distress. His skin grew pale, his breathing labored, and his once bright eyes dimmed. Evelyn's hands moved with her usual efficiency, but something inside her began to stir. This baby was different. He wasn't supposed to be sick. He was supposed to thrive. But Evelyn's calm exterior never wavered. She continued her work as she always had. And yet, as each hour passed, she couldn't shake the feeling that this time was different. When Charlotte arrived to check on her son, the inevitable had already occurred. The baby, who had been so full of life, now lay lifeless in his crib. His tiny body was cold, his face a ghostly shade of pale. Charlotte's heart shattered as she clutched her child in her arms, her eyes filled with an unspoken accusation. She knew, deep down she knew, that this was no accident. The grief that washed over Charlotte was like nothing she had ever felt before. But it was not just the loss of her child that drove her to madness. No, it was the knowledge that Evelyn had done this. She had taken her son just as she had taken so many others. And Charlotte, a woman who had built an empire on strength and power, would not let this go. She would make Evelyn feel the pain that she had caused, the grief she had inflicted upon so many others. In the cold silence of that hospital room, Charlotte whispered a curse. It was an ancient, powerful curse, one older than the walls of the hospital, older than time itself. She spoke the words softly, as though they were meant only for herself. But the room seemed to hold its breath, as if the very air itself was listening. You will feel every moment of suffering, every ounce of guilt, every tear shed for the children you've taken. All of it will be yours, forever. The words, though quiet, seemed to carry an unimaginable weight. The room trembled, and Evelyn felt the ground beneath her shift. The air grew thick, heavy with a dark, malevolent energy. A dark force surged around her, coiling through the air like a serpent ready to strike. In that moment, Evelyn knew that something had changed. Something ancient and terrible was stirring within her, and she could not escape it. Charlotte's whispered curse did not dissipate like breath into the air. It clung, hung heavy like smoke in the sterile hospital room. words were old, older than language, older than light, and yet they pierced reality like a blade. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, twice, and then the world seemed to pause. Evelyn didn't believe in such things. Curses, spirits, the supernatural. Her world had always been one of procedure, silence, and control. She thrived on the cold certainty of death, a predator cloaked in white, deciding who was too weak to continue. But this was not something she could file away in a report or explain with a clipped sentence. As Charlotte held the cold body of her child and repeated the curse through clenched teeth, something ancient stirred, and Evelyn felt it. It began as a pressure in her chest, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to her. Then the lights above cracked, bulbs bursting as shadows surged up the walls like liquid smoke. Evelyn stumbled back, her composure fracturing, her breath catching in her throat. The air around her thickened into a gluey fog, cold and damp, filling her lungs with every inhale. From somewhere unseen, whispers began. Tiny voices, soft but anguished, infantile sobs, gasps, cries for mothers who would never come. Evelyn pressed her hands to her ears, but the sounds crawled inside her head, echoing off the hollows of her mind. She turned toward the door, tried to run, but her legs no longer obeyed her. Her hands trembled violently. Beneath her skin, something moved, something not entirely her. Then the visions came. One after another, the children she had let die appeared before her in flashes. Their little faces contorted in confusion and pain, their tiny chests rising and falling for the last time. Their eyes were not angry. They were pleading. Evelyn screamed, but the sound barely escaped her throat. Her voice had become small, distant, like theirs. She collapsed, convulsing as the curse reached its crescendo. Shadows wrapped around her like fingers, peeling away her skin, not literally, but spiritually, tearing her soul open stitch by stitch. Guilt, shame, agony, emotions she had buried for years poured into her, refusing to be ignored any longer. Her bones twisted beneath her flesh. Her spine snapped backward. Her face pulled taut like stretched fabric. Her mouth stretched too wide, and her eyes sank, blackened by the centuries of suffering she had inherited in an instant. She became gaunt, hollow, and yet swollen with emotion she had never allowed herself to feel. Her breath returned, but it was no longer hers. It rasped in her throat, a dying sound, as though she were breathing for dozens of lungs that no longer functioned. Her fingers lengthened and curled, the skin peeling like old parchment. Her nurse's uniform hung from her body like a shroud. She was no longer Evelyn. She had become something else, something cursed, something bound. The Cradle Witch. Her mind shattered, then reassembled, like a window reformed from broken shards. She remembered every child, every moment, every mother's scream. It all played in her head, a broken lullaby on loop. The hospital room around her dissolved into shadow, and she stood alone in a corridor of fog and memory. But she was not powerless. She was not a victim. She was chosen. The pain was unbearable, yes, but it became her fuel. In it, she discovered a new clarity, a twisted calling. She was no longer the cold gatekeeper who chose who lived and who died. She was something worse, or something better. The curse had gifted her with sight, spiritual, visceral sight. She could now see shame, smell sorrow. She could sense the sickening weight of guilt in others, as if it were smoke rising from their skin, and she was drawn to it like a moth to flame. But she was not there to punish them, not exactly. She was there to offer release, to those drowning in their guilt, to those paralyzed by remorse. They would find her. They called her a myth, a tale whispered to make restless children sleep and guilt-ridden adults shiver. But myths don't leave footprints in hospital halls. Myths don't cry when no one is in the room. And myths don't rock empty cradles long after the last baby has died. She is not a story. She is a presence. After the night Evelyn became the Cradle Witch, the hospital changed. No one spoke of the disappearance. The records were silent. The nurses who remained learned to ignore the creaking floorboards in the nursery, the sudden cold drafts, the unseen weight that sometimes pressed against their backs like a child clinging to a mother. Most left. Those who stayed learned to pray, not for themselves, but for the souls she hadn't taken yet. But she didn't stay in that building. The Cradle Witch drifted from that first place of sorrow like smoke escaping a fire. She no longer needed walls or halls. She was drawn now to grief like a predator drawn to blood, but not to just any sorrow. It had to be heavy. It had to be earned. She hunted those who bore guilt too great to survive, people who had committed terrible acts, or who had failed others in quiet, devastating ways, those who buried shame so deeply it festered and soured. And when the weight became too much, when they sat in the dark and whispered apologies to no one, she came. Her arrival is not dramatic. There's no flash of lightning, no burst of flame. The world simply changes. A flicker in the television when you're alone. The soft creak of a cradle when there's no child in your home. A lullaby hummed softly under your breath. One you swear you've never learned. And then she's there. At first you only see pieces. A pale hand grasping the edge of a doorway. A reflection that doesn't match your movements. A shadow standing at the foot of your bed. Her form shifts, always half hidden, as if reality itself rejects her completely. But the feeling, that is unmistakable. It's like being submerged in regret, like drowning in memories you tried to forget. She brings it all back. The moment you lied, the day you walked away, the night you could have saved someone and didn't. Her presence pulls the truth out of you. Not for judgment, not for punishment, for possession. She does not kill her victims. No one ever finds blood. There are no signs of violence. But those she visits are never the same. They are found rocking in place, whispering apologies to children that were never theirs. They hum lullabies until their voices crack. They sleep during the day and wander at night, as if looking for something they can't name. Some are committed, some simply vanish. Others take their own lives, not out of fear, but because they cannot bear the peace she gave them. Because it is not peace, it is hers. The Cradle Witch cradles the souls of the guilty. She rocks them like newborns, pressing their pain into her own spirit, absorbing every scream, every tear, every gasp. Her mercy is suffocating. Her forgiveness is obliteration. In her arms, you do not sleep. You drown, and she holds you tighter the deeper you sink. They say she carries a nursery with her now, a space between realities, a dark, flickering place filled with the souls of those she's claimed. You might glimpse it in the corner of your eye, a rusted crib, a flickering mobile, the faint echo of infant crying. But it's never there when you look again. It waits in moments of vulnerability, when your defenses drop and your guilt rises. She is not vengeful, not truly. She does not come for the wicked in anger. She comes for the remorseful. She finds those already broken, already lost in their own shame, and she gives them something worse than death: understanding. To be held by the Cradle Witch is to finally feel the full weight of what you've done. She does not absolve. She does not judge. She shows you the truth of your actions through the eyes of the innocent. You become what you destroyed. You feel what you made others feel. The pain is not punishment, it is reflection.